afternoon. I'm Roseanne Cleveland, and it's my pleasure and honor to be chairing the Board of Directors for Grantmakers in the Arts. First, let me start by thanking you all for coming to Houston. We're so pleased to have such a great response, and thanks to everyone who's helped make this a success, our host committee, our committee to plan the conference, all our sponsors, Grantmakers in the Arts Board and staff, and to all of you who help support GIA. I must say that it's a real delight to be working with Janet Brown and her fabulous team. It's great that this staff and Janet are taking the organization in such positive direction, so please give them a hand, would you? This afternoon, I'd like to talk to you briefly about the great board and programs at Grantmakers in the Arts. To begin with, you've elected wonderful people who are serving on the board of directors. They're dedicated, they're smart, they're listening. Find those purple badges and those purple ribbons and talk to them, please. Soon I'll be completing my term as board chair, and I'm glad to see that over the years there are several initiatives that have been evolving. You're probably going to conference sessions today, tomorrow, on some of these topics: capitalization, support for individual artists, racial equity, arts education. Tomorrow, Janet's going to get into more specifics about these programs, so I'll just say right now that initiatives like these gather momentum from an ongoing dialogue, and that it's really important, this interaction, exchange between you, staff, board, all the members. And please know that we're counting on you to help us to shape, to lead, and to listen. Well, today, this year, we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Reader, and I want you to know that over the years, we have published 49 issues with articles by 590 authors, and since we went digital in 2010, 328,858 users have looked at, read, or downloaded 950,526 reader articles from the GIA website. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yep. I think 25 years is really impressive, but what I've been thinking about is just how the idea of reader embodies such important concepts. Okay, so first, a reader, you think of a person who's taking in information, understanding its impact. Second, you think about a text, something you can use for learning. Usually it's a collection for learning and teaching. And finally, you think about a reader as someone who looks to the future, whether reading palms or horoscopes or tea leaves. So I like to think of the reader as embodying important practices. That would be undertaking research and capturing our best thinking and expertise, giving voice to those who engaged in this work, to all of us, and to asking questions about where we've been and where we're going. To elaborate on this a little bit, let me call attention to the most recent edition of the Reader. I'm going to quote Thomas Peterson's remarks in the opening, to the editor's opening remarks. The Reader reflects an important element of GIA's overall mission to improve the practice of arts and cultural philanthropy, which we recognize is not easy work. The field of arts funding is complex, nuanced, multifaceted, and continually evolving. The Reader, along with GIA's annual conference, is the forum we employ to tackle the topics that require lengthy analysis, thoughtful and considered research, and trusted expertise. Yours is a difficult and sometimes lonely job. You deserve the best information we can provide to support your work and inform your practice. Now, over the years, the Reader is much more than that printed version which first took shape, and all 25 years of the Reader and the GIA newsletter that preceded it are available in the GIA web library. So members and subscribers can get the Reader as an ebook and all these popular formats. So let us take a moment to acknowledge those who helped launch this endeavor. First co-editors of the Reader were Ann Folk, who became GIA's first executive director, and Sarah Lutman, formerly of the Bush Foundation, and also one of GIA's founding board members. And we're fortunate today that Sarah is with us. So Sarah, would you please stand so that we can recognize you? So thank her for her contribution to GIA and the field. In addition to celebrating 25 years of the Reader, we're also celebrating one of its greatest champions and one of GIA's founding board members. After 38 years with the Jerome Foundation, Cindy Gehrig will retire in the spring of 2015. She's a GIA founder, a member of the Incorporating Board of Directors, and has been throughout the years an active supporter of the community of practice and an advocate for the support of individual artists. So at this time, I'd like to ask Cindy to come to the stage along with co-editors of the Reader, Peterson and Frances Phillips. So, thank you.
First. Obviously, we rehearsed this. Tomer, in fact, is going to speak a little more to Cindy, but I wanted to say a tiny bit about my personal commitment to the Reader, and also I will admit that when I was being interviewed for my position at the Walter and Elise Haas Fund, and I had no idea what I was going to talk about, one of the things I discovered was the Intersection for the Arts was receiving the Reader. So I read, it was in those days called the newsletter, so I read a couple of topics just so I could begin to think like people who work in arts philanthropy. So all of the time, all of you who have those awkward informational interviews with people who want your job, it's something that you can suggest to them that they do. Now they can go online and read the Reader. I was really honored to be invited by Sarah Lutman and Ann Folk to be a co-editor, which was a couple of years into my time at the Haas Fund, and I'm really thankful to them. But I also want to say the Reader is a collective practice. It has a kind of modest name. We are dependent on a committee of scouts who are responsible for sending us ideas for articles. And I just wanted to thank them briefly before Tomer does the official presentation to Cindy. So I wish to thank Irene Borger from Herb Alpert Foundation, Claudine Brown from the Smithsonian, Lisa Kremen from the Metropolitan Atlanta Arts Foundation, Judy Jennings of the Kentucky Foundation for Women, soon has now stepped off, I believe, Ron Reagan at the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation, Mayumi Tsutakawa, at the Washington State Arts Commission, and Molly Walker at the Archie and Bertha Walker Foundation. So I'm very thankful to them, and please join me in applauding them for their assistance. And I'd like to add that your name may not be on the list of scouts. We depend on the quality of ideas that are sent to us continually. So please do think of the Reader as this living, breathing thing that we want to reflect our members here at Grantmakers in the Arts. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Frances. Very briefly, GIA came into being out of a conversation of disgruntled arts funders at the Council of Foundations Conference in 1984, because they thought the arts program was pretty much thin at that time, much as it is today, actually. And so they started their own organization. And it had kind of a soft beginning. There was a little committee that formed. The first conference was actually put on before the board was formed and before the organization was incorporated. But central and a part of all those conversations was our buddy Cindy Gehrig, who also at the Jerome Foundation has been funding GIA's publication and research and our annual arts funding snapshot and the Reader for all of those 25 years. So Cindy has been a very big part of the supporter of all this. Retirement is the new black, in case you haven't heard this. Any case, one of the important gifts of being an artist, and I'll follow the lead of the poet Lewis Hyde, you may have read his book, The Gift, is the opportunity to give your work away. So when GIA wanted to honor Cindy and the conversation came up, well, what should we do? I said, I'll make a contribution. So without further ado, where's my buddy Jim? Cindy, we have a present for you.
Oh my God. amazing. And you did this?
Yeah. What I was telling you about in the bar.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we have a crate, so we'll ship it back for you.
Well, thank God. I was just wondering how I was going to get that
Yeah.
back. Thank
Great.
you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. Janet is making me do this. She wants me to explain what this is. This is a
Get it on the camera?
yeah.
There we go.
A number of years ago, I was very fortunate to receive an NEA fellowship to go to Japan for a year and studied calligraphy, which is a practice I still continue to do. And this is a piece that is made out of writing, Japanese writing, calligraphy, that is then torn up into little squares and reassembled into a landscape-like painting. So this had its origin in words, and now is what you see before it. This one is glued together. Sometimes I actually sew them together like a quilt. So, but this is a glued version. Okay, Janet.
So this is the part of the agenda that Tomer doesn't know about, where I was instructed to grab the microphone away from Tomer and say a little something about my wonderful co-editor. So any of you who have not yet eaten your little dessert, which is a 25th anniversary birthday cake for the reader, you could have had, if Tomer were really in charge, you would have had scanned on the top of the cake the image that is on the cover of the current reader. And if Tomer had not been deputy but executive director, when we went to Taos, you would have had a hand-woven mouse pad for your computer made by a local weaving collective. And Tomer tried his darndest to fulfill one of Dudley's visions, which was to commission original cartoons for the reader from members of GIA. All of you apparently are too shy to be funny in print. But with all the extraordinary ideas that you didn't quite get, there are a lot of great ideas you did get. Some of them in the reader, some of them at the conference. You got a chance to have the very uncomfortable topic of power imbalance turned into a performance piece that went from GIA on to other conferences. You got to take apart capitalization and understand it through the graphic novel form. You got a ready supply of conference housekeeping tips, my favorite recent one being, if you get lost on the museum tour, all you needed to have done was take candy corn with you and drop it along your path and follow it back to the hotel. So I had the incredible honor of co-editing The Reader with Tomer, during which time he was really the one who kept the ship aright and kept track of all the ideas that came in. And I think most of you know, some of you I'm sure are new and you're just thinking, who's this guy? But how good-humored he is, how tireless he is, and I think it comes from Tomer representing the best of an artist. He's very self-critical. He'll re-examine an idea, he'll redo it, he'll rehearse, he's persistent, and he has a constant generation of new ideas. And he's also really genuinely humble, so I'm making him very uncomfortable right now. So thank you, Tomer.
Hello, I'm Mayor Anise Parker. Welcome to Houston. We're happy to be hosting the 2014 Grantmakers in the Arts Conference and its attendees from across the country. October is a great time to visit. You may have heard that Houston is known as the energy capital of the world. What you might not have heard is that we also have a reputation as being a destination for arts and culture. According to a recent study, Houston's creative economy has a $9.1 billion annual economic impact. The Houston Theater District boasts the largest number of theater seats outside of New York. We're one of only 5 cities to have professional resident companies in all of the major performing arts disciplines. Houston also has a vibrant and dynamic visual arts community that includes the Houston Museum District and its 20 different institutions. Of course, there are many smaller performing arts, visual arts, and cultural offerings, many of which are supported through grant funding. Whether it's the arts, shopping, restaurants to suit every taste, or family-friendly destinations that you might seek, you'll find what you're looking for in Houston. In fact, you could spend 365 days here and still not experience everything this great city has to offer. Houston is a city that reinvents itself, constantly moving into the future. We have an entrepreneurial spirit and a willingness to be inclusive and tolerant. Our diversity is our strength. I hope you'll enjoy your stay here because our home is your home.